Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Caneel Joyce. Thank you so much for coming back, listeners. And if this is your first time here on the show, thank you for making the space and taking this time to invest in yourself. I say this a lot, but I really want to stress the fact that you are worth it. And I am here for you as a growth partner. So I really encourage you to continue to share your thoughts and your progress with me and with the others in our community. It's so exciting to hear your stories and your stories of personal growth and how you're changing your lives. I also really want to remind you quickly that you can continue your growth after the podcast is over. So all of the resources that you will hear about in this episode, as well as exercises, YouTube videos, and a lot more, are all available at allowedpodcast.com. We are bringing on 2 kick-ass business partners in just a minute, and you'll be able to connect with them there as well. Also, we are currently enrolling our Forward Fearless online group coaching program with me. This is a live experience where we are going to go deep into a lot of the concepts that you've learned about here on Allowed and really practice walking the walk. We like to keep these groups intimate. So if you are interested in doing this deep dive into your authentic self and leading with purpose as the true leader that you and I know you are meant to be, then please give yourself the gift of this amazing support system of like-minded leaders and enroll in Forward Fearless. This coaching program is going to fill up, and this window of enrollment is only open for a short time each year. This is actually the last enrollment that we're going to be having this year. So I really hope that if it's something you've been thinking about and you haven't jumped on it yet, I hope you don't miss this opportunity. And even if you aren't sure, just go to Caneel.com or allowedpodcast.com and look into it. Learn more about the program and see if you get a full body yes. You can find out more information at Caneel.com or allowedpodcast.com. You can also reach out to me there if you have any questions. I'm here for you, and I love getting the chance to interact and grow with each one of you. That being said, I am so excited for today's show because we are going to be taking 2 of my dear friends, 2 incredibly visionary and inspiring leaders that I know, David Hassell and Shane Metcalf. These are the co-founders of a company that you may have heard of, and if you have not yet, you are going to be hearing about it all over the place. They co-founded a company called 15Five. This is an 8-figure technology company that supports HR executives with data-driven people management tools. They really are industry leaders in best self-management. They created this world of best self-management. So, of course, I had to have them on for this conversation, not to mention that they're just 2 of my favorite guys to hang out with in the whole entire world. And often when they show up on podcasts, you only get to hear one of them. And I'm so excited that I have both of them here today because it's all about their relationships. And I think we're about to be ready for this conversation. So I can't wait for what they're going to teach us. I want to give you a little bit of background on who each of them is and what 15Five is before I bring them on. So if you don't know what 15Five is, it's an industry-leading performance management software. So it's an app that exists on the web. You can have it on your phone. It's very well designed. It's great. And what it does is it brings together goals and skills and coaching and self-assessment, and it brings all of that to your teams. It is very, very easy to use. It's a scalable platform. You can start super small. They even have a program going on right now because of coronavirus, where if you are a small business like I am, there's actually an offer that they have for you to be able to use the program for free. And we'll be talking about that a little more at the end of the show and give you links to how to access that. It's definitely worth checking out. So it includes weekly check-ins, it includes OKR tracking, peer application. It's awesome. They have done this work with thousands of corporations around the globe. They have companies like HubSpot, Spotify, and Citrix, and they systematically scale authenticity and create extraordinary cultures. I know, with an app, it sounds way too good to be true, but their metrics speak for themselves, and they're going to tell us about that too. So David and Shane and their team practice best self-management, and they use 15Five internally, which they credit with their near zero attrition rate. They have almost never had an employee leave on purpose. So on their own accord. They also credit their rapid growth with this, and they've won numerous awards for their company culture, including both Inc.'s Best Places to Work and ranking number 3 on Glassdoor's list of the best places to work. Do you know how epic that is? Shane and David are a remarkable team, and they are also remarkable individuals. They bring their own whole, unique selves to the table, which is one of the reasons I just love being with them so much. They don't leave out the fun. They bring it. Shane Metcalf is a keynote speaker. He advises on how to build a world-class workplace, and he's one of the world's leading pioneers in the space of cultural engineering and positive psychology. Shane helps HR executives with employee disengagement to maximize their organizational health and create a more cohesive leadership team. He's been featured in Inc., Fast Company, Business Insider, Washington Post, TechCrunch, Bloomberg. I could go on and I won't. And then we have David Hassell. And David is the guy that I met first. And we'll talk about that too. We have some history together. David is a serial entrepreneur. He's a business columnist. He's a speaker. He helps leaders and managers support their employees in becoming their best selves using the science-inspired best self-management methodology. And this addresses the hidden factors that stimulate growth. I'm talking about personal growth, professional growth, leadership growth, and culture growth. And this results in high engagement, high performance, and high loyalty. And what manager doesn't want those things? David was named the most connected man you don't know in Silicon Valley. And this was by Forbes magazine. What a cool award. He's also been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Inc., Entrepreneur, Fast Company, Wired. Again, I could go on. So if that's not enough to convince you that these two men have incredible insight into today's topic, David and Shane also co-host the Best Self-Management podcast. Go and listen. It's fairly new, and yet it has skyrocketed, and I'm watching it. It's climbing the charts of best management podcasts out there. And it's a very inspiring, soulful, authentic listen. So I encourage you to go over there, and we will link to that in our show notes. You can also find it at 155.com/podcast. That's 15five.com. Now, you may not know this, but all of the guests that I invite to be on this show are not only here for you, but they have also been a part of my own growth journey. And these two have really opened my mind. I'm constantly learning new things from them. I'm truly, truly along for the ride right here with you. And I know today will be no exception. And what's really cool is now we all get to sit in this conversation together. So I'm so glad that you have made the time to be here. Let's imagine that we are cuddling up on the couch somewhere and we're on retreat in a cabin and it's like lightly snowing outside maybe, or maybe it's perfectly sunny, like whatever it is that you want. And we're going to get into a nice deep conversation together and really learn some things that I think are going to re-inspire you to grow your teams from the inside out. Thank you so much, David and Shane, for joining us on the show.
So good.
I'm going to stop talking now. So good to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks, Caneel. Two things. One, I'm so impressed you have Caneel.com. I mean, who has just their first name as their URL? That's very impressive.
Right.
Oh, man. I'm also Caneel on Twitter. Yeah. Wow. I'm pretty proud. I'm so grateful to my parents. Thank you. It's fun. I did have to buy Caneel.com, though. It used to be owned by like a nursing home, I think.
It's funny. We had to buy 155.com. It was actually owned by a hip hop group. And,
whoa.
So there's like 155 YouTube channel. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
155.com was owned by a guy who was a medical student who used to run some race called the 155. And when I first reached out to him, he said, it has too much sentimental value. I'm not willing to sell it.
Oh. Still?
And then I reached out a few months later and he said, yeah, I'm probably not going to use it.
Yeah.
Sentimental value, cheap. And second, Caneel, anytime I'm feeling really crappy about myself, I'm just going to listen to your bio and be like, oh, wow, hey, maybe I don't suck. And, you know, bios are such a funny thing, right? Because it is such a, hey, let's make me look as impressive as possible and take all the little tidbits and put them together. And, you know, I'd be curious how many people, when they hear their bio, are like, yeah, that's all me, or are kind of like, huh, wow, that's an amazing spin on who I am.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Shane, totally. I'm with you. And I can't tell you how many times I've agonized rewriting a bio. It's like, okay, looks like my bio is a little out of date on LinkedIn. I'm going to just update it real quick. No, 4 harrowing hours later,
Oh
I'm
God,
like,
it's the worst.
it's the depths of
Yeah.
like the hardness of my soul is like, to summarize a human. And I'm so uncomfortable reading my own bio, as my producer says. She
Right.
notices I always rush through it. It's very uncomfortable for me.
There's a book that just came out called Brag Better, and I forget the author's name. You might know her actually. But it's the idea of like, how do we get better at bragging about ourselves? How do we get more comfortable with reading that bio and not being like, oh, I don't know, am I really that great? And it's like, hell yeah, like that's me, baby.
Awesome.
Like, I'm awesome, and
Yes.
you all should listen.
Well, I mean, that's kind of an interesting transition, I think, from this, sidebar about writing your own bio to something like best self management. I know, something that's like sort of related to best self would be your zone of genius, which is something that we've talked about a lot on the show. We actually had Gay Hendricks, who wrote Joy of Genius, on the show a few episodes ago.
Fabulous, yeah.
He's so awesome. And that was like the most fun conversation. But I noticed, David and I did some zone of genius work together a few years ago, right, David?
Yep.
How many years ago was that? 3
Probably
years
2 or
ago?
3? Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago. I noticed that after I did that, and I'm curious if you had the same experience, David, once I got clarity on my essence, not just by looking at my own life, but also hearing feedback from a lot of individuals,
Yes.
I didn't feel as weird about being that best self. And I certainly didn't feel as inhibited about being proud of it.
Right.
Like, if I wrote, and maybe this would be an interesting exercise, is writing the bio describing that version. Like, it's not the accolades, it's not the PhD, it's not any achievement, but it's my essence, and that feels a lot better.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny is, we all have these bios, and it's important to speak our accomplishments so people want to listen, because we tend to want to listen to people that we respect, who've accomplished things. But I think what Shane's tuning into and what you're alluding to too is that, we're also works in progress. I mean, it's the downside of that is people then put you on a pedestal and don't see you as just another human being that they can relate with. Mm-hmm. And when you said the piece about, inspiring people to live their purpose, or I forget exactly how you said
Mm-hmm.
it, something about living their purpose as their authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
I realize that you can't actually be your authentic self unless you're doing work that's aligned with your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're, going to that place and really owning that piece of who am I? What am I about? What is my zone of genius? Which most of us, I think, tend to overlook because it's so natural.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly focused on all the areas we feel we're weak and then feeling insecure about it. So we never actually discover what that zone of genius is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It makes a lot of sense that the business world hasn't historically embraced the idea of helping people find their purpose and live connected to their genius, because it's somewhat of a risky proposition. If I'm an employer and I help people discover their zone of genius and find a deeper sense of their own purpose, well, they might leave. They might realize their purpose is not actually selling enterprise software.
Yeah.
And I
for
think
the listeners, I mean, I think that's, I wanted to just put a pause in here so that our listeners who are managers of people or who have been I want you guys to just really sit with this question of, where do I fall on that spectrum, and how risky has it felt for me in the past to allow an employee to lean into and discover their strengths? And have you lost employees that way? Is it scary, or is it something you feel comfortable with? Because I think Shane, I think people, I think managers do find this risky, and the risks are somewhat real, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well,
We've had it happen.
and I would even pose another question to our listener, which is, are you living your purpose?
Yeah.
Do you know what your zone of genius is? Are you crystal clear what your top strengths are? And are you using them every day? Because it has to start, right? Best self-management is an inside job, and we need to locate ourselves. We need to know our zone of genius. And that's a hard thing. It's a kind of a mountain that we can only climb. Nobody can do it for us. There can be guides, there can be process to follow, but we're the ones that actually have to put in the effort to climb that mountain.
It's actually hard. It's very hard. It can be really hard to listen to so much positive feedback about yourself.
Yeah.
Or to invite it. Yeah. So before we get deep into, I really want to get into the psychology of best self-management and help our listeners understand how they can leverage this philosophy that you have and the model and the tools. But before we get into that piece, I thought it might be interesting to first ground it in who the two of you are. Who are your best selves, and how has going on this journey of founding 15Five, which is a company that has grown exponentially, like what's that been like?
Yeah, well, I'll just start a little bit, and that is, I feel like I've had a really non-linear path in life. Just the nutshell of other aspects not in my bio. I grew up in Taos, New Mexico. I grew up in a, not your typical American town, let's say. I was predominantly surrounded by Chicano, Native American culture. There was a lot of kind of counterculture, artist community. And so I grew up knowing more indigenous history than colonial American history. And so it's kind of weird when I left New Mexico when I was 20 and moved to Manhattan and ended up being engaged to an heiress and having this crazy
an heiress.
An heiress. Yeah,
a person who's going to inherit a lot of money.
They're like one of the wealthiest families in the world. And so
Whoa.
I went from this hilarious experience of living in like a $300 apartment in Albuquerque, driving a $500 Toyota Corolla, and being just broke as fuck, and basically dropping out to move to Manhattan to move in with my new girlfriend. And I also got an internship with Bobby Kennedy Jr. at Air America Radio.
You're blowing my mind right now. Hold on. I got to take a pause. So how in the world in Albuquerque, driving your Toyota Corolla, did you make an heiress become your girlfriend? How did that happen?
Right? I know, right? That's crazy. It actually happened not very far from where I'm sitting right now in California. And so I came out to California for the Bioneers conference, which for anyone who doesn't know, Bioneers is an environmental and social justice conference. And I'd been attending that for about 4 years every year. And really, actually, in that conference, it was hugely informative into giving me a logical understanding of how we can make life on planet Earth thriving for all life forms. And we have the existing technology, we have everything we need to radically improve every aspect of life on planet Earth for all beings. Or as William McDonough says, to create the condition or to support the children of all life forever.
And where's the button? How do we turn that on?
Yeah, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, here's the button. We're choosing that timeline.
Beep, boop.
But anyway, so when I was 20, I went and I met this girl, and she's amazing, and we're still good friends. But we had this incredible weekend together, and it was like a week afterwards, and we're on the phone, and I'm back in my shitty apartment in Albuquerque, and I'm like, "You thinking what I'm thinking?" And 3 months later, I'm on a one-way flight to Manhattan. I've never even been to New York at this point. And we moved in together, and we actually lasted for about 2 years, which given that we'd spent a weekend together before moving in together,
oh my goodness,
pretty amazing. And it really rocked my world. It opened up. So it was such an expansive experience from being a poor kid from Taos, New Mexico, which, you know, and like, I mean, poor, but like, wow, culturally, spiritually, visually, I mean, what a stunning place to grow up. And so, yeah, so I did a couple of years in New York, and that was great and amazing. And she rocked my world, and it was just like, boom, went so much larger. And then moved to San Francisco, went through the deep underbelly of personal transformation. You know, I did like 4 years. I just like dropped out of the business world entirely. I somehow got a job in clean tech private equity, and failed miserably at that. Would like pass out on the couch in the conference room after looking at spreadsheets and feeling completely inadequate. And then discovered personal growth and transformation, and moved into these crazy intentional communities in the Bay Area, which, you know, is a whole other risque story, and sex cults and craziness, and then became a coach.
Stop it. Are you serious?
What do you do after, like, you know, 4 years of personal growth and not having a resume? It's like you become a coach.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, Shane.
And so I did a couple of years of coaching, and then I met David, and the rest is history.
Okay. So I've heard this story before, but I have to say, it still blows my mind, because there are so many elements of that story that are remarkable. And listeners, you guys should come on to YouTube to see the video of this recording so that you can picture, you know, see what Shane looks like, see his amazing backdrop that he's got right now, and picture this kid moving to New York at age 20. The whole thing is remarkable and speaks to your best self. Yeah. Like, I mean, in my experience, one of your most delicious qualities is your spontaneity, like your willingness to play.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Life's an adventure. And when we can remember that, you know, it makes it a lot more entertaining to play life as a game. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's moments to not treat it as a game, but when we can kind of, you know, in Taoism, they talk about observing from the back of the head. Mm-hmm. And so like often like in our consciousness is at the front of our eyes, and we're like in it, and we're like, oh my God, like we're in this. Yeah. And then in Taoism, they say, actually, if you can take a step back and locate your consciousness at the back of your skull, and then just kind of observe. So you're much more of just like an impartial observer of life, of the Tao unfolding, and it just comes and goes, and there's yin and there's yang. And that allows freedom and spontaneity.
So it's like, normally I'm projecting all my projections, onto the screen of my forward consciousness, like my eyes. And I like imagine that I'm in the movie, right? That the movie's real. But you're talking about, I stand behind the person who's in charge of the projector and the projector. And I'm kind of watching that person from behind. Yeah, I love that. Precisely. I love that. David, you introduced me to Shane. Yeah. I think the first time I met you, Shane, we were at Summit LA. It was the first year of Summit LA. And you were telling me this story, and we were chilling on the couch, and I'm like, who is this kid? Like, what? David, who is this guy? That was a really fun night.
Yeah.
David, you are just one of my favorite people. You and I had a wonderful opportunity. We got to be learning partners when we were in a conscious leadership group coaching forum. And so we got to talk every single week.
Yep.
For like 45 minutes, an hour.
That was great.
That was amazing. That felt like such a luxury. And I remember just you move me so much with your spaciousness. Like, you've made me cry just by being so spacious. So I want to hear about, how did you become this man that you are? Tell us some of your backstory, and through that story, I'm sure we're gonna start noticing the threads of your best self and your zone of genius. I know your story is really cool.
That's great, and I guess at one point I'll tie into how Shane and I got connected, because there's a little magic serendipitous moment where Shane got looped into this whole thing, and we ended up, kind of intertwined on our journey together the last 10 years.
Cold showers. That's
Cold showers.
Cold showers.
Yep.
Cold
So
showers.
keep that in mind. We'll get there.
Mhm.
So I grew up I was born in Manhattan. I grew up in New Jersey. My parents, my dad went to work at Tiffany and Company in 1973. He was a musician from England who had been the entertainment on a cruise ship. And my mom had met him on the cruise ship from Union City, New Jersey. And she was there because she had just had a tragic loss. Her fiance had been killed by a car crossing a road. I met my dad, and my dad ended up moving to the U.S. And my mom and dad both started at the same companies. They worked their entire careers in 1973. My mom was a nurse at MOU Medical Center. My dad at Tiffany and Company. Both retired when they were 65, and now they're in their mid-70s and still working at those organizations.
Wow.
50 years at the same company.
Wow.
And provided a lot of stability, and neither had gone to college. And my mom was very, very focused on education, wanted me to have a good education. My brother, I went to a Catholic grammar school, a Jesuit prep school, went to a good college studying computer engineering, Tufts University. So I was very much focused on this path of, going to do better than my parents, is what my parents wanted for me. And I definitely had this entrepreneurial streak, but I did not have any sense of connection to purpose. I didn't even have that concept. I figured, all right, I want to go into computer biomedical engineering, and then it was computer engineering, and graduated as a developer. Went to work for a big consulting company doing software engineering, and it was a soul-crushing environment. I hearken it back to, I was working from 9 a.m. till 7 or 8 at night in this windowless computer lab in Roseland, New Jersey. And, in front of a computer and saying like, oh my God, this can't be my life. And there wasn't a sense of this connection of culture and purpose in the organization. It felt like, oh my God, I've just, gotten to the end of this thing. It's so exciting and graduate college. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in jail.
You just plugged into the matrix.
Right. Definitely plugged into the matrix. And I was like, oh my God, is this going to be my life? And it happened to be 1999. They gave me a couple of raises in the first year because I was a good performer. They sent me on a project out in Denver, which in and of itself was very fun. I got to fly every week out to Denver and ski and mountain bike and do my work out there. But still was definitely not having any sense of fulfillment and was feeling actually a lot of fear. And it was 1999. I met this a guy in the company who we really jived with. And we were just scheming about all these ideas of companies we could start.
Yeah.
Basically.
Well, because this was the first .com boom. 1999 was like the sweet spot. That was right before it burst. Yeah.
Right before it burst.
Yeah.
So like finally 2019.
And you guys, like if listeners, if you weren't around then or don't know much about it or weren't in the Bay Area or any tech hub, now there's a lot more tech hubs than there used to be, but it was bananas back then. Like you wouldn't believe the parties, just the money, and everyone's coming up with ideas for businesses they can start.
Yes. I remember that. I think the straw that broke my camel's back was reading this article about this 22-year-old kid who'd raised $10 or $20 million for mychristmaslist.com. Or what? I mean, it's just all of these crazy things. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, we got to get out there and do something. We got to escape. So I came up with an idea in the summer of 1999. We started working nights and weekends, quit our jobs, went out and started to build this advertising technology company, raised about $800,000 over 2 rounds of funding. The first round, we raised the money on a $10 million valuation because we had a business plan and it was 1999.
Jeez.
And 3 months later, we raised on a $15 million valuation because we now had an office. And that was
my gosh. So
in downtown Manhattan.
Ooh, different experience.
Yeah.
The industry has grown up and matured a little bit.
A lot. Now, I didn't realize, of course, when I was doing that, you're going into business with somebody as you're partnering with an investor and you've got to produce a return. It took me about 3 years to realize there's no way we're going to be able to give the money back. And that really kind of set me up for, kind of doing what we're doing now and really treating every stakeholder in the business as someone I really deeply want to have win. Because that was actually a painful experience for me. But it did allow me at 23 years old to go off and start building a company. and still was not really connected to this idea of personal growth and development until I joined this organization called EOs, this entrepreneurs organization for business owners that were doing at least $1 million in sales.
It's kind of like YPO, but for the digital era.
It's actually modeled after YPO, but it's for smaller companies and specifically the entrepreneurs, the founders. So I joined EO and was turned on to something called the strategic coach. And there's Dan Sullivan's the founder of that. I never actually took the program, but I was very influenced by the ideas and his key strategies for business leaders. One of them was called unique ability, which is the same thing as zone of genius. It's their trademarked term for zone of genius. And I read this book and it opened my mind to being like, wow, there's this place that I could find in myself where there's this connection between both your talents, your innate talents, the things that you're just good at, whether they're God-given gifts or you just happen to be really interested as a young kid and you did a lot of that, but where that intersects with the things that really light you up, the things you're really passionate about. And if you can find that intersection, he said, this is the place where you have the greatest capacity for growth. You have the greatest chance of experiencing flow, and you can create the most value in the world, get paid for it, and find the most fulfillment. And that was pretty sexy. I was like, all right, well, how can I do that?
I want to know what it is.
Right? Yeah. And so I started taking things like the Strengths Finder and the Colby test and asking people what they saw in me and all these kinds of things. It started me on that path of that. And then I started thinking, well, could I do that for the people who work for me? My employees. Shane and I have a third co-founder, Nizar, who was someone I hired during this era at this company as one of our first engineers. And so I would look for opportunities to expose the people who were working for me to these ideas. Then I met a guy named Simon Sinek a few years later, and his concept around why kind of put another piece of the puzzle together, the purpose element. And
he's for the listeners, if you don't know Simon Sinek, he's the guy who coined this term, start with why. He's got a book with that title. He's a very good strategic thinker. He talks about communication. We'll link to some of his stuff in the show notes. And he's got a great, really old TED Talk too. Yeah,
it's like a terrible production quality.
Terrible.
15 minutes TED Talk, but it's had like 40 or 50 million views. And if you haven't watched it, you have to watch it because it may change your life too. So yes, I met Simon. That was another piece, but still, the whole thing hadn't quite clicked for me. I started studying business with this with a group in the Bay Area. It's a non-university business program that had actually had roots in Landmark, which I'll talk about in a minute. But with a very different orientation and not similar style of teaching, but not kind of the same ethos. But people in that had exposed me to this the Landmark Forum, which I put off for years and years and years. In the midst of all this, I got burned out from that tech company. It wasn't aligned with my purpose. And then I kind of, had this thing in my head. Everyone's like, oh, well, you should go follow your passion. If that's what you want to do. I'd gotten really passionate about kite surfing. So I went down to Brazil with a friend and started an adventure travel company in Northeast Brazil for kite surfers in 2005.
Wow. Wow.
And after doing that for a few years, which was fabulous. I mean,
this was when kite surfing was becoming a big thing. Right?
Yeah. It hit the States in 97. I learned in 2004. It didn't really take off until maybe 2010, I guess. And,
okay. That late.
Yeah. Maybe 2008, 2009, I think was.
David's an early adopter.
Definitely been early. Definitely saw like this thing's going to be big.
You kite surfed before Obama.
Yes. And I was actually, fun story. I was actually on Necker Island when Obama was there right after the inauguration. A contest with Richard Branson.
Oh my gosh.
And I was actually on the water when he was doing that whole thing, but Secret Service were all surrounding him, so couldn't really get very close.
I see glitter coming off of you. Like
but that was really fun. So I did that and I got burned out. Went down to Brazil, bought a dune buggy, lived on the beach, kite surfed every day, had a blast. It was an amazing chapter of my life. But I got to a point where I said, well, I can't really earn very much of a living doing this. This is fun, but I'm not sure this is the level of fulfillment that I'm looking for. And so now I joke that my first business, I was, basically chasing the money, but there was no purpose. And I didn't end up making a lot of money doing it. My second business, I was chasing, my passion, but there was no money. And I said, well, can I bring purpose / passion and and money together. And that was the impetus to start exploring, well, what could I do in the world that would be really deeply aligned to who I am, what I care about, make a big impact in the world, be very, and if I was going to spend 10 years doing something, which I assumed if I started another company, I'd be doing it for at least a decade. You don't get that many decades, and I wanted it to matter. I wanted it to do something that I woke up every morning feeling like we're making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, it was in that time that I also finally kind of went out and did the Landmark Forum, and that cracked some things open for me around my own insecurities that were holding me back.
Mm-hmm.
And then I met Shane, about a year later. So it started the company.
Funny thing, just on me and David's karma, we're pretty sure we moved from Manhattan to the Bay Area the same day.
Wow.
September 12th, 2006, right?
Six. Yeah, that's right. I know,
Destiny. Wow. Well, you two magical people.
So this is a fun story about how I met Shane. As Shane had reached out to me through my partner at the time, Casey, and said that, I think you said, look, I'm doing these webinars for entrepreneurs, and I'd love if you'd check this out. And so we had a conversation about that.
Yeah, it was a webinar. It was actually, I think back and I look at the copy. I'm like, that wasn't that bad. It was supercharged on energy management for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Like how to fill your own tank so that you can actually have the energy to do the entire slog of building a company.
Is that still around? Can we still see it?
Man. We should revive that.
Should bring that back.
Yeah. This is the time.
Well, it's funny because it is all part of best self-management, right? It's like actually taking care of the physical vessel, and our energy is the thing that actually generates the work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me tell you the story really quick. So I had started working on the 15.5 project. We weren't very far in. And I was meeting with 4 of the kind of close friends, initial investors, and saying, gosh, we're going to put something out in the world, but I have nobody who's kind of going to be able to help the customers and coach them. And, it's going to probably take me a month or 2 to find someone I trust. And it was a Friday afternoon at the same cafe that Shane and I had met at a month before. So I walk out and I'm feeling really stressed. It's a Friday afternoon thinking, how am I going to find someone to partner with me on this? And I get a text from Shane as I'm walking out the door. Get into my truck and I call him up, and we have a 20-minute conversation. He's telling me all about the webinar. And at the end he says, well, is there anything I can do to help you? And I said, well, actually, I just had this conversation and, I'm building this product, and I really need someone who's got a coaching background, who could, is aligned with this idea of unlocking potential and all this kind of stuff. And he just kind of goes silent. And
and what's happening there? So I'm like 2 pathways opened up before me. One is brag better, throw your fucking hat in the ring. Yeah. Don't be modest. This is not the time for modesty. And the other one is don't be presumptuous. Don't be that asshole. It's oh, well, yeah, you're looking for that. I'm the guy. So I was presumptuous and said, hey, that sounds like me.
He did.
Yes.
And so 3 days later, we're working together, and there you go.
Dang. And that's the beginning of the story.
The beginning of us.
And back to just the cold showers, and then let's move on from talking about ourselves. But so when I first met David, I was really into cold showers and cold water therapy, and this app called Yayog, or You Are Your Own Gym, by this guy Mark Lauren, who does the best body weight training on the planet. And I turned David onto both those things. I was like, dude, you got to be doing cold showers and body weight training. And David, I was like, yeah, these things are amazing. And so I always think that cold showers and Mark Lauren got me the gig at 15.5.
That's actually what unlocked it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And there's also some other cool facets to that story that we won't go into, but if you ever find me in person, ask me for some more backstory on why and how I started that the webinar on Supercharged. That's a really fun
I can't wait to hear that story. Maybe we'll have to have you on again and hear more about that. Because the stories are incredible. I mean, how co-founders find each other is how many great novels could we fill with those stories? I love this one. So 15.5 was born. And here now, David, you found your purpose. You found that
Yeah.
intersection: purpose, passion, money, hopefully money.
Yes.
But
Definitely.
I'm fairly certain that you did not raise funds for a very long time.
Nope.
Bootstrapped.
Very little. Very little. Yeah.
Okay, very little.
Raised, I don't know, it's $200,000. 25,000 of it was actually design services, and that wasn't that wasn't until we actually had a product.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't for a couple of years that we did, another small angel round, but we didn't raise a Series A until 2018.
How many years in that was that?
7 years.
7
the
years.
company. Yeah.
Unheard of.
And we were running cash flow positive.
We got to 1,000 customers with 0 sales reps too.
Wow. How did you do
Self-serve, building good self-serve onboarding flows and word of mouth, good PR. It's amazing. Word of mouth is such a powerful engine of growth.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of cool, actually, from the product evolution perspective. We're kind of getting back to some of our roots where we really started with a lot of product-led growth, and we're now really getting back to making that as one of the primary growth strategies.
So fun. That's the work I did before all this stuff. So now we've got 15.5. I'm sure our listeners are now really curious about best self-management.
Yes.
And what is that? Can you define it?
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is actually useful to distinguish best self is that, there's a lot of talk these days about companies saying, hey, bring your whole self to work. And I actually just made a LinkedIn video where I kind of call BS on that idea, because companies don't actually mean bring your whole self to work. There are parts of ourselves that are not appropriate for the workplace. There are also, undeveloped aspects. Do we really want people to bring racism and misogyny and bigotry, let alone their sexual fantasies and, all of those other things that are like, hey, that's your business. And we can, there's a lot of really interesting nuance to this conversation. So it's not whole self isn't as accurate, but what we're saying is actually bring your best self and help your people to become their best selves. And what I mean by that is it's like, can we, instead of the experience that David had where he got his one of his first jobs and, it was soul crushing, you didn't leave a better version of yourself from that company. No. What our vision is that people join companies and they leave a better version of themselves for having worked there. They gain relational skills. They are more empathetic. They are deeper, have a greater awareness of their strengths, of their genius, of their competence. They have a deeper sense of belonging, of community, of purpose. That's what we mean by best self-management. Manage your people in a way that they become better versions.
And we believe that when you create a company that's based on that ethos, right? You're building a company that thrives because your people are thriving, because your people are in their zone of genius, because they're, connected to where they're actually great, their zone of genius, their, both their skills and their passions, and they're so connected to the purpose of the company. Like, that's unstoppable, right? You're building a company that thrives by supporting their people and thriving, not at the expense of them, which is what many organizations don't intentionally do, but inadvertently do.
Yeah.
And so we're actually saying, I had something come to me. It's not just about, feeling good and helping, quote, unlock people's potential, but not having them be extraordinarily high performers. But it's also, it is the edge. I see it as the edge. You think about like a world-class basketball player, right? They don't become world-class just by mastering all of the basics, but you also don't become world-class unless you know all the basics. And so we're saying best self-management is that thing that gets you from, being really skillful to being world-class. And doing that at scale, creating an organization that just invites people to step into their true authenticity of who they are, their highest self, their best self, and do the best work of their lives.
Do the best work of their lives.
Do
you have evidence of that?
David, do you want to?
We do in some cases. Yeah. I think that, I will say that I don't know if we've necessarily measured it, But, you look at the way that we've practiced this internally in 15.5 and some of the accolades that we've gotten, right? And some of the metrics that we've produced in terms of, when we crossed the 10 million annual recurring revenue range, we had burned so little cash relative to what most companies do, probably at like 20% of what most companies spend to get there.
Wow.
We had at that point, I think 2 or 3 people voluntarily leave the company ever. And at that point, we were about 100 people, and we've been around for 7 years. We had, we placed number 3 on Glassdoor. If you read some of the reviews on Glassdoor, you'll see people, not just talk about this is a nice place to work and there's great perks, but you'll see stories there of people saying, wow, this place changed my life. I'm a better human being right now. I have better relational skills. One of our core values is cultivate relational mastery. Because we believe that a lot of problems in organizations come from relational friction, and we're not taught these skills of being able to connect with other people at a high level. To understand those distinctions we learned in CLG around being above, locating whether you're above the line or below the line, having clearing conversations, assuming positive intent, like all these different things that we're not taught in our schools and society and our families. And so we inadvertently come in and create all sorts of relational friction with each other. And that's just a drag on a company and has people not want to be there.
Yeah. It consumes a lot of energy when there's drama. Yes. A lot of human potential goes into that.
Exactly.
And so what I'm hearing is this, the story of 15.5 is a story of a company where you remove the friction and you saw like this multiplication of the effectiveness and creativity of your employees.
That's
and
exactly right.
It's like it's the lubrication in the engine.
Yeah.
So
if we are looking at the engagement numbers in the US, right? It's 30% engaged, 70% disengaged.
What is engagement?
So engagement, there's a lot of different drivers, right? And we've been having a really fun internal of our own definition of debate. Do you actually, David, do you have our definition? I bet you could pull that up real quick.
I'll pull it up. It's in progress, but I'll pull it up.
And so this is our working definition of engagement, but you can think of it as that you show up to work and you have a positive association with your work, that you are energized, and like you leave the office with more energy than you went into it with. And I'm not being that articulate. David will get this better, and Gallup has their own definition of engagement when they do these surveys. But bottom line is that engagement and performance are the biggest critical issues that companies really need to solve. That's how you actually win as a business, is increase your engagement and you increase your performance. And most companies are taking okay, cool. Well, we need better performance management, or we need to measure things better. But really what's going on is that people don't feel seen, heard, and valued.
Yeah.
If you can orient your company to rehumanizing your people and saying, hey, you're an employee, but you're also this complex, dynamic human being with a whole self and a best self. And we recognize that and we support that. We do not just support the bottom 2 rungs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're going to create a culture of deep belonging, of psychological safety, of inclusivity. We're going to work on ourselves to be inclusive leaders, and we're going to also help you cultivate your esteem. We're going to help you know your strengths. We're going to help you know your purpose. That is how you actually create engagement and performance, is the rehumanizing of the humans inside your org.
Yes. Because we've designed so much of management practice came out of, this industrial era where we treat humans like literally like pieces of a machine. I mean, like David, when you were plugged into your windowless office.
There's a reason why people who, I remember people talking a lot about like, I feel like I'm just a number. You've probably heard this.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just a number, or I feel like I'm a cog. I left the big company because I wanted to work for a small company because I didn't want to be a cog. Well, the reason they're thinking they're even a cog is because people think about, there are still business leaders. It's not their fault. This is the language we've grown up in, the cultural language that comes out of the Industrial Revolution, where we think about the business as a machine with inputs and outputs and parts, and like either a computer or a mechanical machine. And people are resources. or assets to be replaced. And they're not, you don't think about a resource and an asset doesn't grow on its own, but human beings do. And so we got to think about human beings as human beings, not replaceable parts of a machine. I found the definition that this is, the reason we don't know it is because this is 2 days ago. We're crafting this right now. This is the first place we'll
hot off the press.
Hot off the press. But our current proposal is for engagement is those who find work consistently energizing, inspiring, and meaningful by leveraging their highest strengths, values, and passions.
Ooh, I want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, who doesn't want that? Who isn't going to feel better about their own life and the lives of their employees if that is happening? Let's just imagine like a couple decades in the future where we've flipped and we have 70% engagement, people finding their work consistently energizing and meaningful by leveraging their top strengths, values, and passions.
Probably one of the number one things I do hear when people come into like coaching programs with me is it's those things you named. I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. I don't feel valued. And, for an employee to sit there and 25% of the time they're feeling like I would be better off if I weren't here. Like, yeah, you're not going to get great performance. But I think that it sounds easy to talk about it. But as one of those people, as a manager who feels like I don't see that my employees are being their best self. I don't even know what their best self is. I don't know how to help them find it. I don't know if they want me to talk to them about that. I certainly am not being my best self. I'm not being supported in that by the culture around me. I'm just being judged on like a couple key metrics and all my flaws pointed out on a quarterly basis. So how do you move? How do you flip the switch on that as a manager or a leader? How do you actually do this? Best self-management.
Shane talked about it before. You got to start with yourself. You probably, if you haven't done this exploration for yourself, and if you're not in that mindset for yourself, you're not going to be able to deliver it for others. So I think I was with John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, and he was saying that he doesn't believe an organization, the consciousness of an organization can't exceed the consciousness of the founder. He was, like it really does start with the leaders. You have to go first, and it
really does.
It can be a little scary and vulnerable if that's not your MO. But then I think
another good one I heard is an organization can only grow to the extent of the founder's shadows. If leaders aren't actually working with their shadow, if leaders aren't bringing that illumination to our own dark corners and our own blind spots, the org will never actually grow on that. I like to say that a organization is a fractal representation of the consciousness of their founders. Completely
in my experience. This is when I used to do like consulting on growth marketing, growth strategy, product strategy. I would come in and try to solve this problem, but the solution inevitably would get like smacked down, or it would become ineffective by a problem started elsewhere, because I'd be hired by a person who actually is the one who created the problem to begin with. And the whatever the growth problem was or the product problem was, like the analog between their own shadow stuff, their personal, the darker parts of their past, it would manifest. You can tell. I could look at someone's I could look at a wireframe and I'd be like, I can tell you about your psychology. It just comes out so much. And so the resolution of it is, can we get the founder to open up enough to do that growth, to allow this organization to reshape itself, to create the thing that is actually the best self vision for the company, instead of a manifestation of the complexity of like my strengths, but also, all the ways I hold myself back as a founder. This founder work is so important, you guys. Like if you are a founder, listeners, and you have not yet done a 360 review, please email me right away and I will get you started. Like if you have not done Zone of Genius work, please contact me right away and I will get you started. This stuff is absolutely critical for you and also the lives of those in your organization.
100%.
So
Yeah.
how does 15.5, does that help me as a manager to do this kind of work?
Well, so one of the things that I think we're really excited about is that we're evolving beyond just a software company where we build the software to enable these kinds of conversations. It's all question driven. It's all inquiry based self-reflection and check-ins, goals, performance management. But we're also becoming an education company. So we've just launched the Best Self Academy, which is a free resource where we're putting out courses on, free courses on best self management, on how do you actually start having some of these conversations? How can you start doing the deep dive with your people so that you bring in these elements into your one-on-ones? How do you need to evolve and grow as a manager to be able to create more psychological safety with your teams? And so we have a lot of really great resources there. And then we also have services where we can actually go in and do consulting and actual hands-on work with companies. So that is 155.com/bestselfacademy. David, is that
/academy? 155.com/academy. And the first free course, it's for managers specifically, but I mean, even as CEOs and managers, so really anybody who oversees people. And it's a 4 or 6 hour training manager certification course. And that's completely free. It'll be forever free.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, awesome. And you also have a promotion. So that's free and that's evergreen free. That's going to stay free.
Yep,
you also right now have a gift that you're giving the world in this challenging time. Can you talk about that?
We do. And right now, so we launched this back in March or early April, and we said, look, let's just give away our basic version of the product until June 15th. Now that's coming up pretty soon. But typically we do offer a 2-week free trial. But if you're listening to this and you want a little bit extra time, just email it in and say you heard us on Caneel's show, and we'll give you another month.
We'll create some sort of a link so people can easily grab that or contact you. Thank you, David. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
That was our, really our gift during this time. So many people moving to remote for the first time and never having done that and feeling disconnected. And our software really helps with that, with the weekly manager employee check-ins.
I also want to name that 15.5 has, aside from your fantastic podcast, your free courses, you have a lot of downloadable tools that are really well done, very thoughtful, very, very coherent, and aligned with a lot of what we talk about here on this show. And they also, have a weekly webinar, weekly?
We do. Yeah, I think it's running about a weekly cadence right now. Yeah.
And that's a great high quality one. She invited me to be on one once. It was really fun. All right. We're in this era of remote work. I know that 15.5 is going to help me as a manager to work with my team, but it just seems so important right now at this time to give our managers tools where they can still invest in their employees. And this time we're actually, a lot of people are asking themselves, actually, who do I want to be? Because here I am stuck with myself all day. And I'm seeing the evidence of my own shadow manifest in the way that my house operates, or my children operate, or how am I taking care of myself or not? I think these questions are on our mind of, what is this time here to teach me? So I feel like as managers, this is a great time to introduce a tool like this. What can you inform us about in terms of with remote work? How is this helpful?
Well, God, I would just start with that question, Caneel, of like, what is this teaching me? Because I think rather than, oh my God, this is horrible, and like my kids just suck, and like everything sucks, of what is this actually teaching me? David, maybe that's the problem. I'm just not being
right.
self-reflective enough. I've been going on a joke with David that people suck. And that's my overarching philosophy, and he's very concerned about my turn to cynicism. But actually,
totally.
Maybe it's just that I suck, David, and I need to embrace my own suck. It's all just my projection on the world.
Maybe you have not yet learned to love yourself as you suck, and maybe you do not allow yourself to suck enough.
Perhaps. Oh, well, what's interesting is that it's actually, when I say people suck, I'm actually embracing that sucky element of humanity and loving it. And actually, like, I feel nothing but love when I speak the truth that people suck.
Yeah.
I suck. I have my own, like you wouldn't believe the number of cabinets and cupboards that I leave open on a daily basis.
Oh my goodness.
That
like, would drive my dad crazy.
My wife is like, "Are you kidding me?" Like it's so obvious if you've been in the kitchen because like every single cupboard is left open. And
maybe just take the cupboard doors off. Just like have them open. And pray for no earthquakes.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Let's see where I got off on it.
Where are we?
Well, you were asking how this is helping remote work. Right, Shane, yes. you had shared this Jeff Weiner post with me. Jeff Weiner's the founder of LinkedIn. And he posted something. I think it's very, very astute. He said, the last several years of enterprise software has been driven in large part by the consumerization of the enterprise. The next several years will be marked by the communitization of the enterprise. He said, largely fueled by the pandemic and acceleration of remote work. Work from home employees will not only seek tools that facilitate productivity and collaboration, which is what we're really good at, but software that enables them to feel seen, heard, and truly connected to their colleagues and supported by their company.
Woo!
For example, the virtual office as community. And he's right on. And that's what 15.5 does. And that's that. And I got, I hope from his lips to God's ears that is what's going to happen, because I think that I do think you said this, we're in this reflective period. We're in this place of physical disconnection, but not social distancing. We need to be socially connected. So how do we actually have that feeling of connection when we're all sitting here in our own homes?
Yeah.
And companies are having to learn really, really quickly how to do that. And I think that's more important than figuring out all your productivity and collaboration tools, which every CEO I've talked to has been shocked at how easy that part has been.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right before we got on this call, I was in a community check-in with a lot of the coaches that I collaborate with. It's a check-in that happens twice a week, and anybody can go to it, and it's free. It's like in the morning on Monday and Friday. I'll link to it in the show notes. It's Evolution's Gather check-in. It's 20 minutes, but man, the feeling of I'm in a community of people who see me and give me space to just like be who I am and try to get better and get some support around what's not working. It can be so quick, and it makes such a big difference. So I love these opportunities, and we do need those tools. We need to decide that we could actually be allowed to be our best selves all the time. Like, we don't need to keep being the person we don't want to be. Like, it's a choice. It's a choice to do this work. Shane and David, you guys are beyond fascinating. I would love you, in parting, one thing I'm starting to do here on the show is just if you could name what are 2 or 3 books, resources, or talks that have most impacted you as a leader.
Great. Shane, you want to start?
No way. You're going first, man.
All right. 2 or 3 books, resources, or talks. One I already mentioned, Simon Sinek's Start With Why Talk on YouTube. The book Unique Ability is a great guide, although Laura Garnett has a new book out called The Genius Habit, which is also another great guide on how to find your...
We have a great podcast interview with her on that. If we could link to the show.
Great. Yeah, we'll link to that. Yeah.
Those are the ones that definitely come top of mind for sure.
Awesome. How about you, Shane?
Okay. I'm going to go with Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and really his whole
right there.
Collection. Such a good book.
Nice.
I built my entire coaching practice on that, basically. Such a good diagnostic tool. Really powerful. Second, David's Belief in Me. And that's a whole really cool one that we didn't get into, but because I had some of my like pizzazz and my pluck that I came in with, but I also had a lot of insecurity and didn't think I was actually that good at work. And David just fiercely believed in me. And it was one of the most transformative things I've ever experienced. And I've done a lot of transformational shit. And David just was insistent that I was a genius. And I'm like, wait, what? Me? You must mean that other guy. And he kept giving me responsibility and permission. And that has been one of the most powerful influences in my life. And that's, again, it's a lesson, because whenever we're leading anybody else, we can see what they're capable of. we can hold them in a vision and an intention of their best self, and it is transformative. Probably the most transformative thing that any of us can actually do for another human is to see their best.
Yeah.
And
beautiful.
One more. I'm trying to think. I think it's more of the blend of books and teachers that are about the importance of opening our heart, the importance of healing our own trauma, and actually being on a journey of softening and opening our own selves. So that's I would say.
And I have a few favorites in that category. I'll offer those to the listeners as well. This is going to be a rich set of show notes here. So much good stuff this all connects to. We're also going to link to Landmark for those who are curious about what that is, personal development course that has been very influential. Institution. All right. So
what I would actually say is reading fiction. Reading fiction has been, I've gained more from reading fiction that has nothing to do with business than probably any business book, because you switch into the first person perspective of these crazy heroes and heroines and the crazy trials and tribulations they go through. And I realize that's deeply informed my own sense of the adventure of life.
Yeah. The hero's journey. We're going to link to our hero's journey episode. We're going to link to our shadow episode. We talked about shadow today. We're going to link to, we have 2 episodes on Zone of Genius. We're going to put all of that stuff at alloudpodcast.com. And I'm so grateful, Shane and David, for the 2 of you being here and sharing your stories and really like illuminating that there is this completely different possibility of what work and organizations could be. And this does seem like the time. And what's really cool is I think whatever your role is, there are tools available to you. You do not need to be at the effect of your organization. You can get started right now, whatever is going on around you, or not going on around you. So I'm probably going to be putting together a community call of my own that I'm going to do in the midday time, lunchtime. If you guys are interested in that, please ping me and I'd love to get your ideas on it, listeners. See if you want to come. Okay. Shane and David, how can people get in contact with you if they're interested in following you or reaching out?
You can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably where I'm the most active and where I'm publishing a lot of things. And then you can also just follow 15.5, get on our mailing list, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, 15.5.com/blog for the blog, 15.5.com/podcast for the podcast, /academy for the academy. And then, find me on LinkedIn. Also, D Hassel at Twitter, at DHASSELL.
Great. Fun. Okay. All right, listeners, please go check out Forward Fearless. Like I said, the window's about to close. I really would love to see you join us. If you're curious at all, take the leap. And we are allowed to be our best selves. Please enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself so much this week. Enjoy all those just gorgeous aspects of your own genius. And we'll see you here next time. Check us out at alloudpodcast.com. Bye-bye.